Disaster hits Ford as their quality destroys their future. A lot of people have been going to Ford. When you think F-150 pickup truck, that's what the epitome of buying a truck in North America seems like. As a matter of fact, they've maintained the best-selling pickup truck in North America for many years over and over. Now that is starting to recede because the fact remains is a lot of customers of Ford, and specifically the F-150, are starting to lose the faith. They're losing the trust in the brand. The brand keeps trying to hustle along, push more products out. The factory's trying to keep producing vehicles, but the dealers are having a struggles actually selling these vehicles. Why are the struggles real? Well, first of all, we've seen a bit of a transition, of course, with the marketplace, the high cost of pickup trucks. When you're looking at the brand new tag on these vehicles, Monroney stickers telling you $80,000, $90,000, even $130,000 or more. Raptor R I saw for $200,000 the other day. When people are seeing these types of prices, they're starting to feel like the sense of they're no longer massaged, they're now starting to get slapped because people don't feel very good about the prices and getting taken for a proverbial ride. Now we know inflation's real, and we know the idea of the shortages on the microprocessors and the semiconductors were a real thing 3 years ago, but that's all disappeared. And yet Ford maintains that they're going to continually add price tag on price tag. You know, insult to injury shows that Ford has actually decided not to maintain their prices next year, but to actually increase their MSRP on their brand new trucks. Now, if it's not bad enough, we know that consumers are screaming time and time again for a more affordable pickup truck options. They want something more bare bones, simpler, easier to live with. For example, Rangers and Mavericks, vehicles like that that are smaller, more cost effective. That's actually where the F-150 should be. F-150 is still considered a light pickup truck, but they're charging heavy duty prices. Again, checking out stickers, it doesn't matter where you begin and end. Half ton, 3/4 tons, 1 tons, dualies. They're all charging an extraordinary amount of money, and those that can do, but those that can't definitely won't be buying those. So sadly enough, Ford is in fact committed to increasing their prices next year, and that's all on the backs of the buyer who is struggling right now to even make ends meet. Now, while maybe they don't care all that much, but what's starting to happen is even if there's less and less people that can truly afford a brand new F-150 or 250, the fact remains is as many they're putting out, they're feeling they've got a butt for every seat. Is this actually happening? And the consumers, are they putting full trust in Ford? Well, like we say, we look at what they've done with the F-150 Lightning. Initially, they said this is going to be the end-all be-all of electrification for pickup trucks in North America. But when people start thinking of electric vehicles, they automatically have more trust and faith, whether they like it or not. People generally go to Tesla. It's the name. They've been longer in the tooth. And of course, the charge stations and infrastructure are there where some of these other brands aren't. Did you also see that Chris Farley took that F-150 Lightning for a little jaunt and realized, yeah, range anxiety's real, and these vehicles don't actually have the range that they were hoping to have. So that there sliced a piece off the bottom for trust for the consumer when they're looking at buying a new F-150 and specifically an electric vehicle. All this slaughter of trust actually caused Ford to actually have to take a seat back and chop their production and their output of the F-150 Lightning in half per week. Their volume sales have gone down because people decided we don't have trust and faith in that product. Same with the Mustang Mach-E. People come out with this Mustang Mach-E and everybody thought that's the most peculiar name considering it's an SUV and it's electric. It's almost an insult to people that were true diehard Mustang fans. So again, a slap to the trust wagon. So a lot of people are struggling. You know, Ford at the dealership level constantly trying to find opportunities to sell, pitch, incentivize the sales of some of these trucks. But on the back of that, you have the factory producing these trucks in mass volumes at high velocity saying, you need to take these trucks, Mr. Dealer. And Mr. Dealer saying, I can't take any more. I've literally not been able to sell anything that I've got on the lot right now. And where is all this coming from? A lack of trust. Trust in overpricing, trust in the quality control, the product, even the branding of some of these vehicles like the F-150 Lightning and the Mustang, like I already mentioned, they're taking a chop off of trust. And sadly, a lot of customers are starting to look at some of the other options. Now, specifically when we talk about some of the other factors that are implicating Ford are issues, for example, related to quality. Now, we talk about Ford and they used to use the slogan, Ford is quality job one. But I'm not so sure. In my personal opinion, what I've personally seen and witnessed, there's been a whole plethora of issues. Now, it's gotten to the point where Ram used to be the least trusted, but now they're looking statistically that Ford is becoming the least trusted full-size pickup truck off the boat. Yes, in fact, there's been a whole plethora of issues in recent years, and not little things. You know, like BMW or Honda might have a backup camera issue that doesn't come on when you put the car in reverse. Relatively minor, but Ford issues. Unintended braking, kind of a big deal. If you're driving down the road and the brake and the hit locks up the brakes all of a sudden, that sounds like a potential potential accident waiting to happen. How about fires? How about other issues, specifically like the rear hub issue that deactivates the rear brake controller, that deactivates the rear brakes and allows that truck to potentially roll away. That's kind of a big deal. If you can't secure your truck in a parking lot, what if you live in a city like San Francisco or even some other town that has some hills and valleys? You find yourself parking that truck roadside and the thing starts to take away on you. Or the Ford F-150 Lightning with stuck in off-road mode and you can't disengage that. As well, F-150 Lightning had other issues like stability control problems. Other problems have hit the F-150: parking light issues, modules. And we can't forget that series of vehicles that the insulation under the cabin would drop down on the drive shaft, potentially wrapping itself around, causing a real problem there as well, and damage to the drive shaft. And yes, would you believe it, if you go and Google and look for the most recalled new vehicles, you'll find Ford at the top of that list. Unfortunately, with all of that said, CEO Jim Farley actually claimed that when he came into power and reign over at Ford, that one of his key priorities was in fact to improve on the overall quality of Ford, which then in turn impacts the reputation, which again further in turn impacts the trust that the customers have. But we haven't seen that yet, and I think it feels like it's a lot of lip service, because the reality is what now even Ford is done is actually retracted and said, yeah, we've made some improvements. We've made a 10% incremental improvement on quality, but all they've done is held vehicles back before sending them to actual market and tried to work out some of the bugs before they actually get to market. But that doesn't change the fact that the quality problems still exist. So it sounds like more of a design issue, an engineering problem, the overall desire to make a better product before it even sees the open roads. Farley says, yes, we committed over $2 billion of cost savings across the entire industrial system. But to me, it's much more important that we turned around the initial quality 10% better. Yes, in fact, holding back some of the vehicles with known issues before it even gets to the recall list and the customer's hands. We know some of these quality issues don't just begin and end with the F-150, although that's their money shot. That's their honey wagon. That's essentially where they put all their money in because, of course, the biggest profit margins. But we've seen lots of problems with their little turbo engines. The EcoBoost, we're finding a lot of the Ford Escapes and some of their other smaller vehicles with lots of issues. Head gasket problems, coolant consumption, oil leaks, and you name it. The list goes on. Drop valves as well, the 2.7 V6s, they have had their share of problems. So what do you think this actually does for trust for the consumer? And should the consumer trust what Ford's doing? And do, in fact, you think that lack of trust has an impact on the future of Ford? You darn tootin' it does. Because what's going to happen with time, if you're shopping for a new truck or a car or an SUV, a lot of people are a lot more educated these days. It's very easy to go and do a quick Google search and find out problems with this vehicle, the problems with that vehicle, most problems with, typical issues. And as you start to find some of this information and flushing that out, people aren't dummies. People are getting on board with doing that research in advance, and they're going to find that a lot of the Ford products aren't created equally. They're certainly not in the best shape, and a lot of them do come with inherent issues and big risks. If you're spending 80, 90, or 100,000 or more for a new pickup truck, it's absolutely insult to injury. But believe it or not, Ford Motor Cars has actually set some targets for this year to become best in class regarding quality. And they're really hoping to have this all unveil and unroll within 2025 to start seeing a significant improvement in the overall quality. They're actually trying to benchmark the new Toyota Tundra, which coincidentally, Toyota's ruthlessly reliable inherently, but we do know they've had their share of issues too since they've switched over to these new twin-turbo V6 engines. Even Toyota is struggling with some quality challenges too. However, they've developed a significant amount of trust over the last number of decades. So I'd like to hear from each one of you, and whether you think actually Ford is improving on their overall quality, or do you feel like it's going downhill? Because from my seat and what I've been seeing, since Farley has taken over, in my opinion, we've seen a retraction in the overall quality. Now, with that said, they put out more complex products. Electric vehicles, of course, do add more complexity, and we're going to see more issues there naturally. That's an inherent fact or challenge when you're designing a whole new platform from the ground up. But it does feel like some of those issues are more significant and more substantial. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on whether in fact you feel the quality is there and whether in fact Ford even has a future with the lacking quality that we're seeing today. But with all of that said, be sure to check out that video there. You're definitely going to want to see why buyers can't pay for these overpriced trucks and banks are broke. Hope to see each and every one of you on the next one. We'll see you real soon. Bye-bye.